Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode of me talking about 7 things, I'm going to be going over the beauty and the bro. Before I continue, link below are some referral links to survey sites, and there's a survey down there if you want to check those out. That would be lovely. And I would also like to say, please be nice to the survivalists, don't send hate to the survivalists, and support your favorite survivalist. Thank you very much. I would also like to point out that this is the 3rd episode in a row where we have challenges taking place in the Philippines. This challenge specifically takes place in Palawan Island in the northern coast. And I wanted to point out that this is the 3rd episode on the road to the Philippines is because, last season there were a lot of challenges in Colombia and they had an Excel in Colombia. So if they have a lot of challenges in the Philippines, does that mean we're going to have a spin-off show that's in the Philippines? Maybe an Excel? Probably not Last One Standing, or we could have Castaways in the Philippines. Who knows? I'm probably wrong, but I just wanted to point that out. Now, on to our survivalists. We have Bill and Jolie. Bill is a party guy. His starting PSR is a 5.8, and he says he wants to do the challenge so that he can get a 6-pack for his dating profile. So he probably told the producers a lot of information about his party days, but he does have some skills. He talks about his hunting and other survival teachings that he's had. We are on to Jolie, whose starting PSR is a 5.6. She is a big fan of the show. She was actually trained by E.J. Snyder himself, which is amazing. E.J. Snyder is one of the top survivalists in the whole world, so she has a lot of skills and a lot of techniques and a lot of charisma. So I would also like to file her under the, why are they doing a 14-day challenge when they could have done a 21 and been fine? Other notable names who I personally would file under individuals who were doing a fan challenge that could have done a 21 to start out are Ernie from episode 2 of this season, Kyle M, who was Malou Beyonce's first partner, and Frank, who we've seen do a 21-day challenge. So she will be the 4th person I will file under that list. There are probably more, but those are the 4 notable ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Now, Jolie, she is very charismatic. She is very cool, and her storyline is basically she was a year ago beginning the process of being divorced after a 15-year relationship. So she's worried about trusting other people, and she thinks she can trust herself in this scenario, and so that's pretty cool. I would also like to point out that this is the first ever fan challenge that is a 2-hour episode. Usually fan challenges are 1 hour long, but I think it is worth every minute because a lot of stuff happens. Now, going on to the insertion of these two, Bill brings a machete, Jolie brings a mosquito net, and they're also given a pot and a fire starter. Jolie is happy to be here, and Bill's priorities are not that great at the moment. He is not taking the humidity well either. He is sweating up a storm, and they tell each other their backstories during their insertion hike, and Bill begins his story arc of needing water at all times, and they find fresh water. They begin building their shelter. Bill says he wants an elevated bed because of the rocks would be very difficult to lie on top of, so an elevated platform will, get them off the ground so they're not having rocks jab into their back throughout the night because that would be very uncomfortable. Jolie talks about, as I said earlier, being trained by E.J. Snyder, and E.J. himself said that she is the best female he's ever trained, which is a very big compliment. So I had no worries about Jolie making it through the challenge. And I would also like to point out that it'd be great to see E.J. come back for another challenge. I know he's been very busy, but we want E.J. Snyder back, please. And as I said earlier, Bill was not taking the humidity well. He was getting super dehydrated and also gets nauseous. And so he needs to take a little bit of a break. And so Jolie takes over for a bit with the bed making while he looks after the fire. And he also, during day 1, he kind of loses his lunch. And so that kind of also gets the ball rolling to him kind of being fearful of getting sick again. And so he's like, I must have water at all times. I don't want to feel sick like that ever again. This is so hard. He wasn't crying or being dramatic like that, but that's what I'm just imagining was going on in his head. Probably not. Don't be mean, people. And I will not be mean either. Now, it's a difficult night 1 because the bed isn't super comfortable, and Jolie talks about having insomnia and just having a difficult time falling asleep in general. So she really hopes that they can improve the bed so she can get some sleep. And Bill doesn't really have any problems with the bed. He at one point is talking about, oh, I got 6 hours of sleep. I feel great. And Jolie's just like, that's great. I'm going to go do all the work now. Have fun drinking all the water. Now on day 2, the priority is to get the platform bed completed. And Jolie also makes a dip net to try and get fish, and she gets multiple fish and crawfish / shrimp on day 2. I mean, first try, she's already getting some stuff, and so she's, easy breezy beautiful cover girl, except for the lack of sleep. And on night 2, something bite Jolie's leg, and so that freaks her out a little bit. And when she kind of screams after getting bit, Bill is very protective of her in that moment, is like, what's going on? And he looks around to see if he can find the thing that bit her. It might have been a centipede, but who knows? And her leg fortunately feels better in the morning. And so now we have Bill hydrating and Jolie trying to make a better bed for themselves because she wants to be comfortable, because not sleeping in this challenge is very difficult and it'll take a toll on you, and she doesn't really want to break down. And so Jolie is like, hey, we need to change up this platform bed. And Bill's like, nah. And then he goes on to drink some more water. Now on day 6, Jolie still hasn't gotten much sleep and wants to move. Bill doesn't want to move, but he ends up relenting and they both decide to go to the beach. During the hike, Bill stops for a bit because he needs to rest, because he is at 95% hydration and he wants to be at 100% hydration at all times. So Jolie goes ahead and she sees the beach and she's so overjoyed, and she also finds some coconuts. Bill is not enthused. Bill isn't really enthused the entire challenge. At least we don't see him being enthused at all. He's like, oh, look, things, cool. Stuff, cool. Water? But he's not even that excited for the water. And that's interesting, but I'm sure he's just laser focused on staying hydrated. Now, Jolie says that she'll go back to the pond from their first camp once a day to make sure he has water, because he's worried that if they don't have fresh water there and they just drink coconuts, that'll mess with their digestive system. And Jolie really wants to stay at the beach, so she strikes the deal like, hey, I'll go to the pond, we stay here. Even though I think that she could have just done it by herself. We've seen in Love Thy Neighbor or Not, we see Omar and Raven splitting camp. So I could see Jolie staying at the beach and Bill staying up by the pond. They decide to have this compromise and they stay together. And Bill says that Jolie has unnecessary needs and he thinks that his need for water defeats her need for sleep, but he says he's a pushover for deciding to go to the beach, so that's interesting. And so day 7 comes around and they bicker a little bit about the water, because she carries back about 50 pounds of water and Bill's saying that this is enough for the morning. And Jolie is talking about, I said I would go get water for you once. You need to ration. Thinking you're going to get 100% hydration is not feasible during this challenge. And Bill is like, but I want water. And so she gets really upset because she's basically putting in all this effort and he's just hydrating. And I also wanted to point out how on the Naked and Afraid Instagram page, and I think on Facebook, they kind of spoiled the ending because they show Bill and Jolie on the raft. So it's like, oh, they make it through. Okay, back to the show. Jolie manages to dig a seep well for them to get fresh water so they can stay by the beach so she doesn't have to go back and forth. And Bill talks about how he has no appetite and is just wanting to drink water, and so he doesn't really help with the hunt for food that much, and he says he could do it alone, which is interesting because Jolie seems to be helping him out a lot, getting water and food and stuff, but he's just like, I can do it on my own. I would love to see Bill do a challenge on his own and then Jolie do a challenge on her own and then see what happens. Now on day 8, the hunt for food continues. Bill doesn't want to, but he wants to be supportive, and Jolie spots a beehive. And so they devise a plan to have a fire underneath the beehive to kind of smoke out the bees. And then Jolie would go in with the bug net over her head, and she has like a little crown halo going on. And she would poke at the beehive to try to get it down. And Bill makes a torch to also help smoke out the bees. And the torch is really cool looking. So Bill would hold the torch and Jolie would kind of push on the beehive with a stick, and they execute this plan, and the beehive ends up coming down, and Jolie runs off, and Bill manages to get the beehive, and the only sting that happens is Jolie gets stung on the face, but everyone's fine, and they get some beehive, and that's really good, except for the fact that the beehive doesn't really have much honey in it. It has a ton of larvae, which had been eating the honey, so they basically got a mouthful of larvas, and so they're like, this is fine, but Bill kind of stepped up during that time to help calm her down and to be very calm, cool, and collected during the whole scenario when she was very worried about everything, but he stayed calm and everything went well, but there wasn't really that much honey, so it was, they got some protein, but it wasn't like, yay, honey, like we've seen in the past, which is very unfortunate. But it was nice to see Bill step up. And then day 10 comes around. Bill focuses on making sure he is at least 98+% hydrated. He would love for 100%, but that's not feasible, as I've said before. And Jolie goes out to do some more fishing. She gets so much fish. She's just catching fish. The water level to the pond they were at previously was lower than it was before, so she was easily able to use the dip net she made and just get some fish, and so they were eating good thanks to her. Day 11, they start planning for extraction because they need to build a raft because they have to go into the open ocean. There's some talks of fear of being in the open ocean, but Bill kind of takes charge and is the one who comes up with what type of raft they're going to build, and he also makes a paddle, and so he and Jolie get that together. And also there's a moment where they show Last One Standing Season 1, the raft challenge, which was a terrible idea, and I hope that the person who came up with that idea was reprimanded because it was a very, very bad idea. Why would you put these survivalists in Class 3 rapids on rafts that they built, that they only had, a week to build with materials around them, and they're getting smashed on the rocks and could have been very injured, but entertainment, whatever. It was a very bad idea, and these survivalists deserve better. And anyway, back to the episode. Day 11, as I said, plan for extraction. Day 12, they continue to build the raft. And then we have the survival kit, which is Bill making sort of a hook or a loop where he can use it to get low-hanging fruit, and he uses it to get a coconut from a tree. So Bill does have skills. And then when we come back from the survival kit, we have day 14. And it's extraction day with the raft. Hooray! There's some worries, but they get to paddling and the raft is doing its job, and they manage to paddle to this little rock island, and they're looking and they're like, where's the boat? I can't see the boat. And then the boat appears, and Bill and Jolie have successfully completed their 14-day fan challenge. Congrats to both, mainly to Jolie because the episodes show her doing the majority of the work, and Bill was very much worried about his hydration. I'm sure Bill did something because his PSR goes from 5.8 to 6.5, and he also loses 26 pounds. Now, if Bill was just a bump on the log, I think his PSR would have gone down. I don't know exactly what went on throughout the entire time, but if his PSR were to increase, that means he must have done something, unless production is just trying to get people to be mad at him because they're like, why is his PSR increasing? We didn't see him do much. Or he did more, but the edit didn't show it. But, I mean, there have only been 2 times where PSRs have decreased during a challenge, and that was Cassie in the Double Jeopardy episode and Fernando for eating poisonous mushrooms. So I guess as long as you don't eat poisonous mushrooms and have 3 people supporting you throughout a challenge, then you're good. But I don't know. But his PSR goes up, and Jolie ended up losing 7 pounds, so that's amazing that she didn't lose that much during a fan challenge because, these challenges are tough, and, I said Ellie losing 9 pounds on a 21-day challenge was cool, and Jolie only lost 7 pounds throughout the 14 days, so she was doing what she needed to do and surviving, and her PSR goes from a 5.6 to a 6.8, so congrats to them. And super congrats to Jolie for taking charge and being the reason why this episode is 2 hours long. It did not feel like 2 hours. I'm sure it could have been a little bit longer and people would have been happy, but good job to them, and I hope we see Jolie for more challenges. She's amazing. Kudos to her. And with that, that is the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Okay, bye-bye.